fellowship in IOL and anterior segment and pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus.
I think there's an echo because there are two windows opened up. One is Dr. Anurag Mishra, it's written here, and the other is in OT. So maybe there is some, yeah, he has muted, I think, that one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Ma'am, please carry on.
Yes. So Dr. Anurag Mishra is known to all of us. He's a very dear friend, and we've been watching his live surgeries on various platforms. He passed out his MBBS in 1999, did MS ophthalmology in 2003, and he has 2 long-term fellowships in IOL and anterior segment in pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus from Arvind Eye Hospital, Madurai. He has 13 years of experience and has been an invited faculty in various society meetings, as well as performed more than 60 live surgeries. He has publications in peer-reviewed journals, and he's very passionate about understanding and practicing technology. And he has one of the best assemblies of equipment. He's director of Radha Raman Hospital, Cuttack, and partner at Car Vision Eye Hospital, BBSR. And today we are going to watch his surgeries. And so now we would go to the OR of Dr. Anurag Mishra, who is going to be taking us through the various surgeries. To you, Dr. Anurag.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Absolutely clear. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, AIOS, for the opportunity. This has been wonderful. And before we get going, I would just like to steal 120 seconds from all of you, including the audience, just to mention a few things that I've always wanted to, and I was searching for a proper platform to do that. I think the last 3 years, out of which 2 years have been marred by the pandemic, I think we have seen a very, very proactive AIOS, and the office bearership has to be thanked for all the efforts that it has been putting together, particularly to Namrata ma'am and Raja sir for the phenomenal leadership that both of you have shown. So no amount of salutations would be enough to justify the expressions that each member of AIOS would be having for both of you. So all salutations to you, and I think this phenomenal work should continue in whatever new role that the esteemed society has to offer to you in the coming years. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir, for the exceptionally vibrant society that you have built and created and carried on in the last 3 years. So thank you so much for everything. I'll just share my... Thank you, sir. I'll just share my screen for a while to give you the patient details for patient number 1. Can we have the slideshow, please? Yes. Right, so this is patient number 1. Play. Yeah. So this is patient number 1, who is a 62 years old female, and this is the slit lamp picture of the patient. It's a grade 3 nuclear sclerosis, and what we have planned is an MICS with a premium hydrophobic aspheric foldable preloaded IOL, and the surgery has been planned under topical anesthesia. If you look at the IOL Master 700 picture, then we can see that the delta value is shown to be 1.17 with the difference of K1 between K1 and K2. The steep axis lying at 88 degrees. The calculated spherical IOL power is 22. In the next page, we get to see the variant planning. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the variant planning, which shows us that the IOL power required is 21.5 with a toric version of T2. Next slide, please. This is the printout from the eye trace, which doesn't show us a lot. Everything's under control, everything's normal. There's no IOL tilt of whatever origin. The spherical aberration is also under acceptable limits. Next slide, please. This is the AS-OCT of the same patient, which shows that there is a dense nuclear sclerosis at the center, but the capsules are doing fine, and the anterior chamber depth is also doable. There's nothing wrong with the depth of the anterior chamber. Next slide, please. This is the specular microscopy picture. The hexagonal cell percentage is slightly on the lower side, though. It should not cause any difficulty for this grade of cataract. The cell density, though, is doing pretty well. And lastly, we come to next slide. the OCT picture, which doesn't show much to look at. It's a pretty normal looking posterior pole. So stop share. So now we get to the microscope view. Can we have the microscope view, please?
I must tell you one thing, Dr. Anurag, that this is, I think, one of the best patient details presentation I have ever seen. So very nicely presented patient details.
Thank you so much, sir. Are we seeing the microscope feed?
Yes, we can see. Admin team can put it on spotlight.
So this is the patient in question, who is a 62-year-old lady. Now we go ahead and register the patient with the markerless system. We can see all the patient details right on our screen before we start the surgery. So the registration has been done, and the next step will give us the entry points. So this is the primary entry point. This is the primary entry point, and the other two are the secondary entry points, the side ports. So I normally do not anchor the conjunctiva while making the ports. So both the primary and one of the secondary ports are made together this way. And then we move to the other side and create the third incision for the eye. Then I go ahead and switch off the overlay. Actually, I don't use it nowadays for capsulorhexis. I used to do them. I used to use it for capsulorhexis previously, but not anymore. There's no particular reason to it, if you ask me. It's just that.
Does it obstruct your view, or do you feel?
It does, sir. It does obstruct the view. And if you are fine without it, then you can jolly well go ahead without it. It's that kind.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
So it's just a word, just a food for thought, that whenever you're attempting to do a CCC, you should always maximize the red glow available on your microscope, whichever instrument you're using. If it does give you the liberty to customize the illumination, then the red glow should be maximized to its fullest potential so that you get a proper, virtually burning red glow against which you can construct or fashion a proper CCC of a proper size and proper location.
Yes, wonderful red glow. You can see that, and very nice nexus.
So you can see the fluid wave too, if the red glow is proper. And a bit
we
of
can see the
lamination as well. I always do this, give it a few twirls to the nucleus before we start phacoing it, so that all the peripheral, most of the peripheral lens epithelial cells are destroyed in the process. So this is something I am habituated to doing.
So it frees up everything which is attached to that corticonuclear complex, the few fibers that sometimes remain attached to the capsule. You free it very nicely.
That's right, sir. So before starting to chop the nucleus, just clear out the fluffy epinucleus or cortex, whichever is there, anterior to the harder.
Yes, I can see the IOP that you're using.
Yes.
Is 20.
It's very minimal, yeah.
Is it what? Is it that you keep always, or?
Yes, absolutely, sir. I'm a low fluidics, low IOP phacosurgeon. I do not use the IOP anything in excess of 30 in any situation. 30 is also something that is used very minimally. So usually it's kept at 20. So I mean, particularly with machines like this, which offer you the liberty of using low fluidics phaco, I always stick to a very, very low IOP.
And what's the maximum torsional that you have kept in this case?
I think it's visible here too. It's kept at 40 with the threshold being 0. You can see that on the left-hand side of the tiles of the overlay.
Yeah, threshold is 0. That I can see.
Threshold is 0 and the max is 40.
It's going up to
And
sometimes 31, 32, not beyond that. So maybe 40 you have kept.
40 and
you're using the balance tip, right?
I'm using a balance tip. So that quite significantly saves you on your energy consumption. You don't need to use much of an energy at all. And perhaps you can get a fair bit of idea looking at the grade of the nucleus. It's not very soft. It's a moderately dense nucleus. So with a moderately dense nucleus, also you don't need to use too much of a power.
Okay.
So we are through with chopping. We'll go to quad removal mode now, wherein the settings are almost similar. The only thing that changes is the IP setting actually, but otherwise they're quite similar. You could put it again.
So it's a good message that
using any augmented tip movement technology, I would always recommend that the tip should be, the hand should be pronated a little bit so that the bevel remains sideways, and the augmented tip technology that like Ozel or even Ellipse works vertically. It always is more efficient when it works vertically. So just pronate the hand a little bit so that it's the bevel sideways and it starts working vertically.
So for chopping, you did not.
Highlight of this surgery is going to be in the later part when we will be implanting the IOL that we have decided for this case, which is the preloaded aspheric hydrophobic toric coming in from the house of Hoya Laboratories. It's a brilliant IOL, as we will find out in a short while from now. So we're through with the nucleus. We're just left with the cortex. And as you can see, the CD is 13.52. So that's well within our perfectly acceptable limits. We did mention that the hexagonal cell percentage was 46 in this case. So we had to be careful about the amount of energy we spend in the process of emulsifying the nucleus. So that's perfectly within acceptable limits. It will not cause much of a harm to the endothelial cell integrity. Here also the IOP is at 22, but the vacuum, as you can see, is 600 and it's in panel mode. So the moment the foot switch goes to position 2, it operates with a vacuum of 600. But even then, I think throughout the procedure, you never saw the anterior chamber flinching even once. So it maintains the anterior chamber depth beautifully, even if the IOP is low. So that's the beauty of modern day equipment. So coming back to the product, the IOL that we were talking about, the assembly is just getting readied now.
Yeah.
The planned implantation axis is at 85. So this is, I'll just show the assembly for once, for the benefit of those who are watching. This is the way it is dispensed. The preloaded assembly. You can see the spherical power mentioned at 22, and it's a T2 model of the toric. So it's very easy, 1, 2, 3. So once the lock is removed, before that we just need to go ahead and put some BSS in here, or sorry, viscoelastic in here.
Viscoelastic.
Sorry, I'm not good at it. Yeah, you can see the fluid, the viscoelastic wave traveling across the cartilage.
Yeah, I can see that.
Then we need to dislodge this lock from here, advance the slider, which is present out here, to this position, and then it is ready to be dislodged from its holder. Once you dislodge it, You can just advance the IOL, and there's something called a tucking pin that is on the ventral side of this cartridge, which beautifully folds the IOL every single time. Look at the way it is folded. It's a blob.
Yes.
It's beautiful. And if you look at the plunger side, the reason why it's called a multi-stud is it can be pushed in, pressing your thumb here. In fact, it advances only with a nudge, and it can also be rotated in. So you have a rotation facility. You can see the movement of the plunger with the rotation, right?
Yeah.
So you can either rotate it in or screw it in, or you can also push it in. More about the designing of the assembly a little later when we go take up case number 2 and 3. It's not good to unfold the whole drama in the first scenario itself, so we'll just wait for that.
But one thing is absolutely clear that, you know, the assembly looks very gorgeous and fantastic. And the delivery we will just now see how good.
So you can see that on the light flow. You can take the cartridge.
You're doing it hydro, right? Hydro implantation.
Yes, I'm implanting under BSS.
Yeah.
And the cartridge is right outside the capsular rhexis margin. So very close to the bag and very predictable. I just switch off the irrigation for a while before I come out, because this part of the iris always tries to escape through the wound when you try to hydro implant these IOLs. So I'll take the IOL, put it in, and dial it into the bag. Just repose the iris, which was trying to foul play with us. And then we know that the angle of the alignment axis is at 85. So that's precisely close to where I left the IOL. The other thing about this particular IOL material is the very deep markings on the Toric IOLs. Look at the deep markings that are there on the Toric IOLs. So it's very easy to align them. And the third absolutely zapping feature of this IOL is that even if you try to rotate it anti-clockwise inside the capsular bag, it does it with ease, which normally it's something we don't see, particularly with the hydrophobic materials. You will rotate them clockwise, them rotate easy. If you try to rotate them anti-clockwise, they give you some sort of resistance. But this particular Vivinex platform is beautiful to rotate even anti-clockwise. And I don't know whether you noticed that, but there is a textured haptic. The haptics are textured.
Yes.
They're rough, so that the rotational stability in the postoperative period is also very, very good. I've been using these products for quite some time now, and the postoperative outcomes are very encouraging. So I'm very happy with the way they have behaved. So before closing the case, just a bit of preservative-free moxifloxacin that goes into the AC. So that's the end of that. Case number 1 is through. And
very nice.
Now we can.
So you were talking about the textured haptic. What are the advantages? What do you feel? What are the advantages of this textured haptic? And
the advantages of the
also has a roughened edges as well, the edge.
No, the first thing and the foremost thing, obviously, is that it's something that maintains the rotational stability of the IOL very well. So it keeps it's in place. So whenever we plan a Toric IOL, we obviously would like to have the rotational stability as one of the paramount features of the product. So we have to be absolutely happy with the rotational stability of the IOL before anything else. Now, my observation in the past few months since it was launched to me and I've started using it rampantly is this is very interesting. Sorry, sir. Can you hear me?
I can't see you, actually.
So I think the feed from the video camera needs to be spotlighted for you to see
yes.
me.
Yeah.
Right. So for the past few months since it was launched and I've started using it with increasing frequency, what I've realized is the eyes where we need to be very careful regarding the torics, meaning the extremes of the axial lens, the myopics and the hypermetropics. That's where Vivinex has performed very well. And it has performed even better in the lower torics, which is again something that we need to be speaking about, because this is not out in the open. I've not really studied this, but I've observed this to be true. Why it is important is because in the large capsular bags, the lens rotates quite easily. And in the small capsular bags, once the shrinkage happens in the post-operative period, the optic kind of moves forward and there comes a myopic drift over a period of time. That also is likely to happen in very hypermetropic eyes. Both of them have been quite sturdily resisted by the Vivinex platform. I think I studied their design a bit, and what I found was very interesting. The optic haptic junction, it sits right at the posterior plane. It doesn't sit anteriorly. So it doesn't leave a space between the optic margin and the haptic margin on the posterior surface. So perhaps that is, and it doesn't bear any angulation. The optics do not bear any angulation with the haptics. So they are flat. So there's maximum contact with the posterior capsule. The other thing is the active oxygen treatment, which has actually rendered them very pro to the fibronectin binding. So it improves the tackiness of the material as well. Both of them combined, they have performed very well when it comes to post-operative refraction stability, both in terms of cylinders and spheres. So I've been very happy with that. And apart from that, as you mentioned rightly, sir, the textured haptics also have contributed towards the rotational stability.
You pointed out a very important thing, like we have been talking about the posterior surface being ozonated, and that's why there's better adhesiveness of the posterior surface to the capsule, less chance of PCO, etc. But the point that you just now described, the refractive change, which can happen in any other lens, which is less likely in this because of the design. That is a very good point that you have highlighted. That is something which needs to be highlighted. It's a wonderful lens. I completely agree with you. Very good implantation devices. And I mean, in my opinion, it's definitely the best implantation device that we have been using right now.
Yeah, so based on the implantation science alone, and if we just kind of negate the other factors, based on implantation science alone, it certainly has to be ranked the very best that is available in the industry, because I think we have been, for ages, we have kind of avoided hydrophobic IOLs to be available in the preloaded assembly, just because we know that they're not very malleable and it can't go through a small nozzle. What Hoya has done is not only has it made it available on a preloaded platform, it has also ensured that the cartridge is not exceeding the size of 1.8, which is actually very futuristic. At the moment, the MICS essentially means somewhere around 2.2. But in the future, in the very near future, we might just go to sub 2 millimeter phaco. And it is already future ready. Even if it goes below 2 millimeters, the IOL is already ready for implantation. So it was a very futuristic move. I completely agree with you, sir.
True. So the diameter is 1.6 millimeters.
Yeah. So it's 1.76 for Vivinex and even less 1.62 for Nanex, which is going to be our next implant. So should we move on to the next case? So the next case is a 71 years old gentleman who has been selected, whose right eye has been selected for same procedure, MICS with hydrophobic, preloaded.
You had shown very nice PPT of the first case. Can we also have a look? Have you made a PPT this case as well?
Huh? So I have been actually logged out by the admin, so I don't know where my system with which I had joined. I don't know why it has closed. Go to mail. Just a moment, sir. I'm trying to allow launch meeting. Video. So admin, please let me in. Okay, so now we share our screen. Yeah. Patient 2. Okay, so
Yes.
so this is patient number 2, who's a 58 years old female, and the cataract grading is grade 2 to 3. And what we have planned is right eye MICS with premium foldable aspheric clear preloaded IOL, which is marketed with the brand name of Nanex. Next slide, please. This is the IOL Master 700 picture. As you can see, there's not much of a delta here. It's 0.27 sitting at 138. So this is not a patient who is ideally suited for a toric implant. And it obviously the machine did not show us any toric planning as well. The next page would be variant planning. So this is the right eye. So I always make my primary incision at 180 degrees with the side ports sitting at their desired planes. It also doesn't give us any toric planning. So we stick to the spherical IOL that we have planned. Next page, please. So this is the next slide. Next slide. You're stuck. Sitting on. The next slide is, I don't think you can see the next slide. Can you see that?
No. We can't see. It's stuck. So maybe the next slide you will be showing the specular count.
No, the eye trace finding actually.
Eye trace finding, yes.
Eye trace finding. The only thing I wanted to highlight in the eye trace slide was that it was a 1 point, the total spherical aberration was 0.17, and the negative spherical aberration in these lenses is 0.18. So that's 1 point that we need to discuss about. Certain IOLs which have negative asphericity actually have more negative asphericity than we desire. So once it is not, it is more than 1 point, more than what the IOL adjusts towards negative asphericity. So the point is, if you have access to an aberrometer like an eye trace, you should always look at the total spherical aberration in the cornea and how much you are negating with the IOL. The resultant asphericity should be either 0 or a little towards the positive side. It should not be on the negative side. If the resultant spherical aberration from the cornea and the internal optics combined would be on the negative side, then the patient might have distortion in its vision. So that is a point that I wanted to highlight. So I always choose IOLs which have a negative asphericity of 0.17, 0.18, not more than that, because a lot of aging patients might have a low total spherical aberration on the cornea. So if you end up negating them more, then they might go on to the negative side, which is not going to be beneficial for the patient. We also had the ASOCT picture as in logged out. I don't know why I've not been able to share my screen, but the ASOCT also doesn't show much of a challenge here. The anterior chamber depth remaining quite well within normal limits. And then the specular microscopy also has. I don't know why I have not been, my screen is not showing up there.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So the specular microscopy shows that the total cell count is 2,736 with a hexagonal percentage of 59%. So that's about the case info on the right hand side. So we would be starting off the case soon. Admin, please switch to the microscope view. Here it is. Variant.
Can we have the microscope view, please?
Launchment. I'm being logged out actually repeatedly. I don't know why the So admin, can you use the other feed, please? The other feed from the microscope, can you use that? Close करो, पूरा close करो, mail browser करो.
Microscope to microscope.
Can you spotlight the microscope feed, please? I think the video camera feed has been spotlighted.
Yeah.
You have to reverse the PIP, admin. You have to reverse the PIP. Jio रो छोटा आने की लगे कि तादेरे वाईफाई रे कनेक्ट करा जल्दी. Yeah. So we good to go, sir?
Yes, absolutely.
So we register the eye again. And it shows us our incision planes.
So when you make the two incisions together, have you ever encountered like sudden movement or by the patient causing some problem in that?
So in the left-hand side, when we have the limbs forceps or whatever globe stabilization forceps that we might be using, the side port instrument actually essentially does the same thing. When we just make a small dimple on the cornea like this, it holds the globe in place. So even if the eye is trying to move, it holds it steady. So initially it's a little, because it's a bimanual thing, it does take some use to being done, but once you are through with the first maybe 50 surgeries, then you're fine with it. So I was very wary of the occasional conjunctival avulsions, tears, and subclinical hemorrhages that I used to produce.
No, I completely agree with you that, holding the conjunctiva with limbs takes away the beauty of doing topical anesthesia surgery, because next day you will see some redness in the eye and that takes away all the beauty. That is one. Then damage to conjunctiva also is there. But some people, what they do is that they just make one side put first and then put the stabilizer, wound stabilizer, and then make the main put. So there are different ways of doing it. So I really like the way you did. That's why I just thought that, have you ever encountered that? So maybe yes, by that dimpling, you can stabilize the globe and from the other side, the incision. So that's also a good way of doing.
Yes, right. So once again,
and do you inject anything inside the eye for like some people use Xylocard, etc.? Do you?
Yes, I did that, sir. I did that. I do that routinely in every case. Preservative-free Xylocaine, a small quantity, because I always believe that is what gives additional comfort to the patient. So it's always good to inject a small quantity of that just to ensure maximum cooperation coming to you from the patient side. They don't flinch. It essentially anesthetizes the ciliary body beautifully. So even if you stretch the tissue with fluid volume or whatever later on, the patient does not complain of any pain or any awareness whatsoever.
Very true. And what viscoelastic you normally use for doing?
It's HPMC, sir. It's normally HPMC only. I don't use the volume forming viscoelastics much. So it's either HPMC or a bit of chondroitin, only when I think that the endothelial cell count is very low or the cataract's very hard, on top of a higher or advancing age. So the age of the patient is always taken into consideration when I try to use these viscoelastics. Otherwise, it's always HPMC only.
Very true. Very true.
So this is the primary chop. Once again, the fluidics and the dynamic settings are kept very low. You don't need to use more of what is not necessary, what is not absolutely necessary, meaning.
The point that you emphasized earlier in the previous case, that when you are holding the nucleus, you don't use the IP because that will reduce the strength of hold. And once you have chopped all the nuclei, then you use the nucleus pieces, then you start the IP, right?
Yes. So I do use UP while going in, even in the chop mode.
Okay.
But as you rightly mentioned, once you are holding or near holding, then you come back to foot switch position 2, hold it there, and then chop it. So that's a very good point made, because modern day phaco machines are so powerful and so fast that if you use power a little more than what is necessary, they'll eat away into the nucleus substance and your hold will be very poor. So it is important that you come back to foot switch position 2 once you are near holding, so that you have a proper hold and the second instrument does the job of chopping it apart.
And you always use a sharp chopper for...
I always use a Chang's chopper. This is a Chang's chopper coming in from the house of Epsilon. So it has a 2 millimeter sharp beak. And yeah, I mean, this is irrespective of the grade of the cataract. This is the chopper I use for all the grades.
Okay.
Understandably, this was a much softer nucleus than the previous one. So we finished off with a CD count of hardly being 5.9.
Just 5.9. Very good. Too good.
So in these patients, sir, I have completely stopped using topical corticosteroids in the postoperative period. I've actually scaled the CD to be, kept the threshold of the CD to be 15. So below 15, any CD count in an uncomplicated case, I do not use corticosteroids in the postoperative period. I just manage them with topical non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents. There are beautiful formulations available now in the industry, which are preservative-free too. So they're very cornea-friendly, very well tolerated. There's a dose compliance as well. Some of these formulations come in the OD dose format. So you put just one drop late in the evening and that does it for you. So I have actually my, and the dose compliance, if the dosing is less for the patient, it is also less cumbersome for the patient. So he or she doesn't have to remember the dose.
Yeah.
And you also, most of us top it up with some sort of topical lubricant as well. So the surface really remains healthy and the patient's very comfortable in the postoperative period. So this is the, we're through with the surgery now. We come to the business end of the procedure again, which is the IOL implantation. This is the same assembly, just that the nozzle is even thinner with Nanex. It's 1.62 in its bore, which was 1.76 in case of in case of Vivanex.
Vivanex.
So this is this tiny hole which is there in the assembly, through which we just pour in some BSS. I'm not using any viscoelastic here. I'll just tell you why.
Yeah, I was curious to know why BSS and why not viscoelastic.
So I'll just show you that after the assembly is dislodged. This cartridge only has BSS inside. You can see the plunger now and look at the IOL being folded and moving forward. So but it's lost its shape, I think. I would achieve that. Just lost a bit of its shape. We just arranged. So coming back to the point that I was trying to make, this has several mechanisms which go into naming it the way it has been named. It's called a multi-cert because of the 4 liberties that it gives you. One of them we had already discussed, the plunger, which can either be pushed in or can be screwed in, which is something we have already discussed. The other thing we have discussed is The other thing we have not discussed thus far, and we said that we'll discuss it later, was this particular nozzle. Now, some people might not be very happy taking it right up to the posterior capsule. So some people might be happy just leaving it at the wound and then injecting the IOL. If you wish to do that, then what you can do is you can just grab hold of this and then just advance it. Look at the flexible little guard out here, little brace out here. So the brace can be moved forward, which essentially shortens the length of the cartridge out here. So this, if you keep it this way, this will not go into the capsular bag anymore. This will stay at the wound and then you inject it in. So you can have one of these four modalities. You can either screw it in or push it in. And secondly, you can either leave it at the wound or take it to the capsular bag and then push it in. So whichever suits you the most, you can choose that.
Yeah, just wanted to know from you that, this has been, we know that, yes, you can put it wound assisted, but do you ever do that? Do you put this brace a little anteriorly to go wound assisted? Because it's such a small tip that you can very easily go inside and do an bag implantation.
No, sir, I don't do that. But
okay, but the option is there.
Option is there.
Okay.
The option is there. So people who are scared of taking it right to the capsular bag, because we have not actually seen another assembly in the industry which does this. So if there is a skepticism, if there is a mental block, if there is a thought block, one can always choose to put it in the traditional way. So that is what the manufacturers have thought, perhaps, and they've thought it wisely. I think if should they choose not to take it in, they can choose not to do it. I'll just show one more aspect of the cartridge, which I forgot to mention. This is, I'll see if it can be withdrawn. No, it's difficult. I'll show it in the next. So there's one more design advantage that this assembly has, which I'll demonstrate in the next case before we push the IOL in. The unfolding part is slightly slower in Nanex in comparison to Vivinex, and these two are wonderful IOL platforms coming in from the same manufacturer. So it is but natural that the two IOLs themselves, the two platforms themselves, would have some sort of comparison between them. So comparing them, standing Nanex against the Vivinex, what I would conclude is Vivinex unfolds a little faster, Nanex unfolds a little slower. But when you push it in, peculiarly, the Nanex actually does not have any stretch marks on the surface. The Vivinex might have one or two, which is, of course, nothing to worry because it hardly stays for 20 to 30 seconds and then it vanishes off. Smoothness is equal in both. The reason why the bore size is different, why it is a touch thinner in the Nanex in comparison to Vivinex, is because of the fact that the material profile is different. Though they both undergo the same oxygen treatment, active oxygen treatment, though they both are dispensed in a similar fashion, but the material profile is a little different. So perhaps it is a thought behind that if we squeeze the cartridge size to less than 1.76 with the Vivinex, it might just not be sufficient. It might just be a little disproportionate at the cartridge's end. So that is one thing I just wanted to highlight.
A couple of other differences also. Perhaps the textured haptic is not there in Nanex, and the square edge, that is, both have unpolished square edge, but the textured haptic perhaps is not there in Nanex.
It isn't, because Nanex was not designed as an IOL which will have, this is what I think, which will have a future edition of a Toric. So basically, this was meant for the rotational stability, and that is why the textured haptic concept came in. But Nanex, it doesn't have it. But it's a very, very clear lens. So even if you look at it on the post-operative period, we don't have, of course, experience of a decade now, but then whatever little observation that we have had thus far, it's a very clear IOL. It sits perfectly in the eye. It shines through. Every time you look at the patient under the slit lamp, and the rotational, the refraction stability is amazing. It doesn't give you even a snitch when you see the patient routinely or after 3 to 4 months or 6 months. It just stays where it is, and the refraction stability is really, really amazing. So it reduces the time in the OT because there's hardly any time you require for preparing the assembly. It reduces the risk of contamination because you're not taking it out of its assembly and putting it into the cartridge. And you're not compromising with anything. You're gaining a lot at the cost of nothing. So it's a very superiorly balanced trade-off where you're not losing anything and gaining a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that they say that I would like to have your experience as well, that the square edge of, say, Vivinex is not polished. So it is rough. So that is why the chances of dysphotopsias are quite less. So
yeah, so dysphotopsia is one thing. We know that it's an enigmatic field, so it can happen with any IOL virtually of any dimension or any material or any design. Thankfully, it has come down considerably nowadays because we have learned to place the, and I would seriously advise to, I don't know how many so-called young or budding surgeons are watching this, but I would certainly advise everybody to place the haptics in a horizontal plane all the time and not place them vertically. If you are not forced to while implanting a toric, otherwise you should always implant them and place them in a horizontal plane. And that way it has actually minimized the dysphotopsia a lot. The rough square edge, I don't know. I mean, the optical part of it, how does it prevent dysphotopsia? But it is true that with the Vivinex or even the Nanex platforms, the dysphotopsias are quite rare. It's not seen. But having said that, they are quite rare in our practice, generally speaking. So maybe
very true. Very true. Very true.
So shall we go to case number 3, sir?
Yeah, please, please.
So let me, I think we are back online, so we should be able to show you the screen.
That will be great because you have very nicely, made the PPT of all these patients. Patient details have been very nicely presented. I mean, of course.
Case number 3. Sorry, case number 3.
Yeah.
Patient 3. Patient 2. Yeah, this is patient number 3. Who is a 71 years old male, and the nuclear sclerosis stands at grade 2 to 3. And what we have planned is an MICS with premium foldable aspheric toric preloaded IOL under topical anesthesia. Next slide. This is a 700 picture, and as we can see, the axial length stands at 25.97. So this is a myopic eye. We were discussing this just a while back that the Vivinex platform works very well in the extremes of axial lengths, both in the myopic and the hypermetropic ranges. The delta stands at 1.1. So the calculated IOL power is plus 14, and the toric version is perhaps T2 again. So it's a 14.5 T2 as shown by variant. Next slide, please. As shown by variant, the primary incision stands at 20 degrees, as is my favorite axis for the left-hand side. The next slide shows you the eye trace picture again. Next slide. So the eye trace picture comes on. Nothing to see in this, apart from the fact that the internal astigmatism on the positive side is high. So this always comes. So whenever you look at an eye trace picture, just remember, if it's a myopic eye and if it's a grossly dense nuclear sclerosis, you might have a little bit raised coma and a little raised astigmatism levels on the internal plane as well. There's nothing to worry about that. They might not actually show a lens tilt. However, it is also noteworthy out here is the Vivinex platform it's got an accentuated asphericity platform. So even if the coma is high, which predicts that the IOL decentration in the postoperative period is likely, it's likely to happen, the asphericity is not lost from the Vivinex platform. So that's another addition, which is again future ready. So for a myopic eye, if you select this particular platform, you can rest easy, even if there is a bit of decentration in the postoperative period, which is likely to happen and which is shown by a higher amount of coma preoperatively itself, do not fret, because Vivinex has a resistance to the possible decentration that might happen after some time. Next slide, please. So this is the OCT picture. Again, a high myopic eye with a dense nucleus versus the OCT picture is not very clear in this case. Next slide. This is the specular microscopy. The hexagonal cell percentage stands at 52, and the cell density is also 2,763, which is pretty good. Next slide. This is the ASOCT picture. As expected, the density is quite high, but the anterior chamber depth is also pretty. It's a pretty deep anterior chamber, as is expected in a myopic eye. Next slide, please. And I think we also did, no, that's where it stops. So I think we have missed that. We also did a dry eye profile for the patient, which yielded pretty regular, normal features. So this is also a carry home message of some sort. If you are preparing any patient for an AT IOL, for an advanced technology IOL implant, then should also look at the surface of the eye before going in and deciding on an AT IOL at least, because that can modify the So as we prepared, can we, are you getting to see the microscope view, sir?
Yeah, we can see that.
So, so the one unmistakable feature of a myopic eye, the moment you try to focus them under the microscope, is that you can see the vitreous opacities, the vitreous condensations moving around. So once you see that, you know that it's a myopic eye. So we do the registration. See that on the light too. So you can see, I think it's very clearly visible, the vitreous opacities. See that on the light too. For a clear corneal incision, I always prefer the blades that have a straight back cut after the shoulder and not the tapering back cut that some of the other blades have. For a clear corneal incision, I always prefer the design of the blade to be like this, because they always render the incisions more square shaped, in my opinion, in my observation. So these blades come from the house of Oro Lab. They're called Oro Sleek, actually, and I have no financial interest in this, but I've been using them over the years and I've been very happy. I always carry my blades wherever I go for live surgeries. See that on the light too. We were discussing about low fluidics phaco a little while back. And these are the eyes wherein the low fluidics phaco actually comes in very handy, because you have the possibility of reverse pupillary block and the patient wincing in pain every now and then for a high myopic eye. Not so much if you're using low fluidics. So that doesn't expand the iris. It doesn't cause it to fall back. It doesn't cause a reverse pupillary block, and doesn't cause any pain, therefore. So we do have come across various strategies that people have described to overcome the reverse pupillary block. When you look at this particular patient, when I introduce the phaco probe in, you will see that it hardly deepens to any extent. So you don't need to do anything to, I mean, we used to do this previously. We used to lift the iris opposite the segment from where the phaco probe is entering, just to free the eye of any possible negative reverse pupillary block. But nowadays, with getting habituated to low fluidics phaco, we don't need to do that at all. Mind you, the
point. That's a very good point because that is something which has been emphasized a couple of times earlier. But you very rightly pointed out that with these, you don't have to do all that.
So mind you, in these cases, the phaco needle will be almost vertical. It will be very oblique because the eye is deep. The anterior chamber, I'm sorry, is deep. So it is likely to produce a bit of torque at the wound because you are going very oblique. So you have to manage those mechanical forces. You have to manage those vectors so that you don't put any sort of thermal stress on the wound as well as mechanical stress. You don't open up any lip of the wound. You do not press on the posterior lip in particular, which causes more of an egress of fluid from the eye. So those things have to be kept in mind. Those things have to be balanced. The hands have to be steady when you are making them this oblique to reach out for the nucleus. So this needs practice, all right, but I mean, nothing that is beyond anybody's reach. So a high myopic eye is just a normal eye. Forget about the fact that you are going to be operating at a deeper plane. It actually is good for you that you are going to operate deeper because you are that much away from the endothelium then. So it's good for you. There's nothing to be.
But one thing I must, tell you that with the parameters that you are using, it is particularly very useful in, the IOP that you are using is particularly very
Absolutely.
in myopes, no?
Very true, sir. Very true. And if you have a rock steady anterior chamber, what more do you need? Why would you try to flood the eye with fluid if you are achieving the same picture with the same ease, the same breathing space with a lower IOP? You know that you are close to the physiological plane, the physiological limits of everything. Why would you bother overloading or bombarding the eye with fluid? It's not necessary.
Very true. Very true. Because excessive fluid, again, you will have shallowing and deepening of chamber, and then the breathing pupil that is classically described for myopes, and that was intraoperative meiosis. So all these risks are there. Very nicely and the chamber was so steady and so nice that one can see that the pupil is still very well dilated. Everything is fine in a high myope like this. And I could see that you use this bent IA probe in all your cases.
Yes, sir. I'm a big admirer of this. Again, another thing that is a constant accomplice when I go out for life surgeries anywhere.
Yeah.
So this also is kept in the box. I love the coaxial IA cannula and I love the bent tip because it enables me to quickly wash off or clean off the cortex. So it hardly takes any time to get rid of the whole cortex complex out of the bag. So it's fast, it's easy, the accessibility even to the subincisional planes is beautiful.
It's a big advantage for subincisional with these eye probes.
Absolutely true. And with the other advantage of these high-end microscopes is also the fact that you can also see tiny little stub-on fibers sticking into the posterior capsule. So you should flush them out with BSS.
Yes.
Something called
this is again, I could see that in all the cases you have done this, and this is by jet of irrigation. The is trying to remove whatever small lens fibrils are attached adherent to the capsule. And you're talking about the microscope. There's a question. There are a lot of people who are watching you on YouTube, and many are congratulatory messages that it's fantastic surgery, too good, all sorts of things have been written. And I mean, rightly so. There's one question that which microscope is this?
So this is the Luxor Revalia coming in from Alcon Laboratories, the new gen Luxor that has come to us recently. the advantage of this particular microscope is, as you can see, it produces a brilliant wide field red glow. So the red glow is not there only at a sweet spot. It is there right throughout. I'll just speak about the microscope a little later. Just let me come back to the assembly again. The one thing that I wanted to show the audience was this teardrop back cut. You know, the normal IOL cartridges would be rounded off here. There's a small teardrop back cut in the Vivinex and the Nanex platforms. Now, why this has been given is not something that I'm sure. I'll have to go and talk to the engineers if I have to understand more on this. But what I have understood and how it has helped me in particular, according to my observation, is this is a very small and narrow cartridge. As we are advancing the IOL, before it comes to the tip of the cartridge, it's already starting to unfold because this area offers slightly more space than this area does. So it doesn't keep the IOL bound to its boundaries for too long. Before it is delivered into the capsular bag, it already starts unfolding. So that is probably the advantage of the teardrop back cut. But I'm not very sure why it has been given. I can't tell you with that much of authority. But I mean, it's one of their design points, and they have been very happy to keep it in all along their portfolios. So once again, look at the way it unfolds. And so now you can have a proper look at the textured haptics that we were discussing as the IOL comes out of the cartridge. This is a 14 diopter IOL. So the thickness profile of the IOL is going to be very thin, understandably so. And this is the textured haptics. I think it has it shows a very clear picture of the textured haptic.
Yeah, we can see that.
Axis 143. So I just ask my assistants before I finally align or finally switch on the markerless system, the axis of implantation. In this case, it is 143. So I know roughly where to leave the IOL for the final adjustment. So it should be close to the, look at that. It's close to where it actually should sit. So don't worry about it. This just only comes with experience. Nothing else can guide you to do this. So you have to be a prolific user of Toric IOLs to be having that picture. But I often, I mean, this is probably out of context a little bit, sir, but let us just discuss, because I face this question very often, that is it absolutely necessary to have a markerless system in your OT, because these equipments are expensive. So is it absolutely mandatory to or essential to have it in your OT if you're trying to graduate into the Toric IOL practice? So to my, of course, I'll take Rajesh sir's opinion regarding this, but he has experience using all of them. But to me, I would say a no to that. It is not absolutely essential. It is true, but it just gives you that extra bit of comfort so far as the alignment along the desired axis is concerned. If the desired axis of alignment is 141, the IOL goes into 141 and neither goes to 142, neither comes back to 140. So it stays right at 141. So it is that kind. And apart from that, they also help you in planning the torics. They give you different models to choose from. You can look at the residuals with each one of them and then decide which one to implant finally. They'll also give you the flip, and most of them come with the integrated Barrett's toric calculator nowadays. So that also reduces the stress, reduces the sweat that you're likely to spend in the process. And so they come with an excellent planning cockpit. Okay, so this much for the IOL. It's just quickly going back to the microscope. So this is the Luxor Revalia as we were discussing, and it gives us the liberty of using both the coaxial and the oblique illumination together, and you can split them into 60, 40, 140, 80, 20, the way we want it. But finally, the resultant of all that is it has a divergent red glow, so the red glow stays for a wide field. It doesn't stay at a particular sweet spot. And if normally in the other platforms, if you move the microscope a little bit or the patient moves his head a little bit, the red glow kind of goes away. But with this, the red glow stays with you even if you move the microscope a bit. And it has a very functional screen on the back. There are plenty of applications to this. I mean, to understand this microscope, you would probably have to spend around 15 days with the instrument to understand it fully. But yeah, to answer your question, this is the Revalia, and I've been very happy. It's been fun to work with this machine. I've always enjoyed working with machines, and this is just one of those toy boys with which I've enjoyed working in the last 5 or 6 months since the time it has been installed.
Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, so many congratulatory messages I can see on YouTube. There's another question, and that is that from one case to another, do you scrub or you change your gloves, or what all you do?
I'll be honest with my mates. Of course, there's nothing to keep clandestine in this. I do not change my gloves or scrub. Definitely, I don't scrub between cases at all. I do not change my gloves routinely. I change them every 3 surgeries, actually. So this was the 3rd case, after which I'm supposed to, of course, this took a while longer because we were discussing, and this was a live Surginar, so things were going slow. Normally for 3 surgeries, I would take around 15 to 20 minutes. So that's the frequency with which I change my gloves. And before I change it over to a new pair, I take a bit of sterilium, which is 70% alcohol, and then take approximately 40 milliliters of that, which is 5 or 6 pieces from the bottle. So 6 pieces from the bottle, take it in the palm and then rub it, and then apply it all over, smear the hand with the solution, and then rub it. So what I do is I cross my fingers and rub them for around 20 occasions, and then the thumb for 10, and then maybe 10 times on the reverse side. Then I wear the new pair of gloves. So that happens every 3 surgeries in my OT. Yeah.
Okay. Editor Barbosa wants to know, how long have you been using this injector system? This appeared to be very good, and since how long you're using it?
I'm not sure when it was launched to me. When was the time? I think it is close to 8 to 10 months when I have started really rampantly using it.
Yeah.
So it didn't come with the multi-cert platform initially. It was only the screw type injector. So that caused a bit of an issue with me because I hydro implant. So my assistant has to screw it in, of course, and she cannot see through the microscope. So she has to be, of course, I'm blessed to have such a wonderful team of assistants with me. But even then, it's always a human error. It's always a user error that is likely. But even with that platform, the material quality is something I was always happy with. So I was just waiting for, since it had come to my ears that they're planning to change it over to a multi-cert platform, I was very excited about it. And finally, when the multi-cert came in, then nothing was to stop me. I almost completely switched over to the multi-cert platform, and very happy with this. Is our real premium products. If you allow me to speak on that, they're real premium products, and they do deliver premium. That sort of premium feeling comes to the patient when he or she goes back from the OT or even on the post-operative checkup. No complaints. There's just one little addition to whatever I have discussed thus far. It's interesting, just an observation. When you ask patients to sit before the IOL Master 700, the premium biometry machine that we have in the industry, and you don't tell the machine that it's a pseudo-phakic eye, it recognizes that there is an IOL inside and automatically changes its mode to go to the pseudo-phakic mode. With the Vivinex in place, the machine fails to know that there is an IOL in place. It takes the eye to be a phakic eye, and it stays in the phakic mode. It doesn't go to the pseudo-phakic mode. I've seen this very, very frequently, and probably it goes to show that the material is so clear that it fails to recognize that there is an IOL. Probably it does not cause those echoes or those reverberations which normally IOL materials do cause, and that causes the machine to understand that there's an IOL in place and they change modes. With the Vivinex, they do not, it doesn't change modes and it stays on the phakic mode. So just another add-on that I wanted to speak on.
That's fantastic. Another question by Dr. Rama, horizontal placement of IOL is 0-180 degree, or for temporal section, horizontal axis being 90 to 70 degree. I think it is 0, 180 degree because the idea of telling horizontal placement means 0, 180 degree of placement of haptic, because that's how we want to. And Khurshid says that yes, by putting this way, it reduces dysphotopsia a lot, but a few patients still perceive the shadows and temporal side, and finally they accept it. So what are your inputs and experience?
No, they don't accept it actually. It actually goes away within 2 to 3 months. So 90 days is what you should counsel them for. It usually vanishes off after that, usually does. And if it doesn't beyond that, then there are various strategies how you can negate that, including putting the basic, the most favorable solution that is right at your hand and is very accessible is perhaps to put in a 0 power multi-piece IOL into the sulcus. So that essentially cuts down the negative dysphotopsia down to 0. But talking about myself, I've never had to do this because I don't have a patient who has really complained of disturbing negative dysphotopsia even after 3 to 4 or let's say 6 months after the implantation. So I've never done it. But theoretically, yeah, there are choices.
And Dr. Sushil Ojha, he says that Wavenex lens is very good in inertia and slow unfolding allows proper centration. So it's a controlled unfolding, I would say, and that's how you get a proper in the bag centration. Again, many people have written nice surgery, nice toy. Now, Dr. Mansi wants to know, is it mandatory for the OT assistant also to change and scrub after 3 surgeries?
So for them, it is 3 surgeries per trolley. So ultimately, it becomes 6 surgeries for me. So since we use 2 tables, so it's 3 surgeries for them per trolley. So of course, the ratio is the same, but talking about the OT inflow, they change after every 6 patients.
Dr. Pramila wants to know, how do you manage to rotate the injector with one hand as left hand is used for stabilizing the eye?
No, I don't. I don't do that. It's when it is the screw type, it is always my assistant who screws it in, while I just hold the nozzle at the wound or inside the eye, and then with the left hand, the irrigation cannula goes. If it's
that's what you're telling. It's push type, that the push is so smooth with this multi-set system that you would love to keep doing it and love to keep implanting lenses. Many congratulatory messages. Again, wonderful surgery, nice surgery, very nice. This is like Dr. Anurag and Dr. Anurag, superb. So many messages.
The mask is very effective in hiding my blushes. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks a lot. And we would like to have your OT team as well. We would like to see them because behind a successful surgeon, there are some good, hardworking OT technicians also. So they can come along with you, with the backdrop of Hoya. So we would all like to see you all and appreciate the hard work done and the very nicely organized live surgery. And of course, the surgery was done by you, an excellent surgery, but all these organizational thing and the management in terms of shifting the patient, cleaning, draping, having everything ready is done by staff. So we would like to appreciate all the staffs of...
Since you mentioned the keynote file that was prepared for the preoperative things of the patients also, all that has been done by them. I have not even seen the patients, selected the patients right from Strickland photography to OCT, bundling them all, bunching them all up in one pen drive, according to the name and the serial number of the patient. So I think this is the 4th or the 5th live surgery that's being webcasted from ROT for different societies, for different meetings. And every single time it has been a huge success because they have really known what sharing responsibilities, what job responsibility is all about. And as I said at the beginning, I'm really fortunate. I'm blessed to have such a magnificent team with me. This is just 20% of the hospital's total strength. And of course, as you rightly mentioned, the OT forms the cornerstone of any hospital. There are some people outside also who are also constantly running amok, talking to the internet vendor so that the speed remains stable. There's no glitches anywhere. There are no drops, no buffers. So it's been phenomenal. I've loved working with my fantastic team, and need all your support and blessings for all of them. Thank you so much.
No, I really appreciate the hard work done and the kind of life surgery. Without it was absolutely flawless. Flawless, not only the surgeries. I mean, of course, your surgery was flawless, and the way you described each and every step, and the way you described the injector system, wonderful lens, everything you described was flawless, absolutely fantastic. Your arrangement, your staffs, and of course, as you said, the internet, because we never found any glitches in terms of loss of signal or anything. So a big thanks to you, a big thanks to your team, big thanks to Hoya, and the technical support that was there in getting this Surginar live to so many people. A lot of people, we will not imagine. I will tell you the numbers. So many people have been seeing it on YouTube. And I would also like to thank the staff of AIS headquarters, especially Mr. Kirpal, who has been really very effective and active and instrumental in getting all these Surginars done very successfully. But then, once again, a big thanks to you and your whole team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. As usual, it has been an honor to be with you, to spend some time with you. Looking forward to the next opportunity, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I just missed a big thanks to all the people who have joined in and who interacted and whose participation makes this Surginar meaningful. So a big thanks to all of you who have joined in making this Surginar successful. So thank you very much and goodbye for now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.